Today's the final cut down day, the 53-man roster. And if you're on the East Coast or waking up on the West Coast, news of Cam Newton being cut. Kind of the headline here is New England has decided to go with Mac Jones as their starting quarterback this year. So let's back up. We had a few teams that needed to make decisions. And feel free, guys, if you want to jump in at some point here at the end of this, because I think there's some where we thought like, okay, are the Jets really making a decision other than Zach Wilson, especially when you look at the rest of the depth chart at that position? I mean, the Jets are just going for it here. Who else? Jacksonville had to make a decision. They went Trevor Lawrence. I don't think anybody was shocked by that one. I think the only thing you could look at is the handling of the Gardner Minshew deal. Was it brilliant in the way they handled him as if he were a real option and therefore they got something for him in a trade with the Colts? Or was it a complete waste of time and a charade when Lawrence was always going to be the starter and then Lawrence wasn't getting enough reps? And that's something that we hear all the time. And as I get older, and sometimes I'll push back a little bit, no one's ever told me reps actually aren't important. Okay, I'm not arguing that. But I guess I don't know that I always believe that if like a guy isn't taking every single rep that somehow like deters his career at some point. So it depends. There was opinions all over the place on the weekend on the Gardner Minshew deal. Brilliant or a complete waste of time. But Jacksonville's going with their guy. Houston's a whole nother topic. We'll get to the Deshaun Watson trade rumor stuff that was going on this weekend as well. Denver goes with Teddy Bridgewater. Chicago, honestly, Bears Twitter is so insufferable right now. And not that I've ever put Bears Twitter in that group with other fan bases, but like the amount of angst and depression that all Bears people have, and even like it's leaked over into people that have no emotional attachment to the Bears whatsoever. The fact that Nagy like just keeps pushing back on Justin Fields starting. I kind of feel like it's becoming a waste of time because look, here's what's going to happen. Dalton's not going to be that great, and then Fields is going to play. And I don't know that it'll prevent the Bears from making the playoffs. Who knows? It's the NFL. You never know. You switch out half the teams. The Saints going with Jameis. That honestly shouldn't be surprising whatsoever. And then Trey Lance and Garoppolo. I don't know that was really much of anything there. And Trey Lance did hurt his finger, but that's not that big of a deal apparently. If I go back and jump on one of these, the Deshaun Watson, he turns 26 in a couple of weeks. The rumor was that they were going to get 3 firsts in 2 seconds. I don't know. There's some ballsy front office people. I don't know who would have both the equity built up with the city. Although, look, if we're being grown-ups about how these decisions come about, as tough as the allegations are against Deshaun, and there's a ton, I don't know how you trade for him because you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen with the NFL, the player protocol, because they got to wait out some of this stuff. And there's the civil charges. And apparently, I think there's 10 criminal charges now. I don't know who would trade for that guy. But I think if we're all being honest here, there's a good portion of NFL fans. If you ended up with 26-year-old Deshaun Watson, you'd be like, all right, we'll see how this goes. Ride this out. I mean, you would have that. You would have that conversation with yourself or with your buddies being like, well, we'll see how this goes. But the idea that you don't know what any of those are and then you give up 3 firsts in 2 seconds. Look, I would never rule out any transaction, but that's a huge ask with that kind of uncertainty that played out. All right, so then you have the Pats. Anybody around New England, what's weird is last year guys that were around the Pats were telling me Stidham was better in camp than Cam. Cam Newton, as we spent a lot of time talking about him last year, as the season progressed, I thought it was one of the worst seasons from a quarterback that I've seen. Is like week to week, somebody that's supposed to be a guy. He's clearly, Cam at his worst is still better than some of these other guys that should never even be starters. But with Cam Newton, there's a minimum level of expectation of what you're supposed to see there. Yes, there were opt-outs. Yes, the Patriots are bad at the skill position guys. Yes, he got COVID. And, after that Seattle game, you're thinking Cam Newton's the best signing in the history of free agency. $1 million a year, and everybody's freaking out about it, and then it falls off. I mean, he had 5 touchdowns total, 5 passing touchdowns total going into the last week against the Jets. So for the season, he had 5 and then ended up with 8. I've told you numerous times as you watch it play out, and people kind of figure it out. And I don't know if it was COVID. I don't know if it was injury or what. It just got worse and worse and worse. So when the announcement that the Pats are re-signing Cam for a deal that could have gotten to $13.6 million, Cam still made $3.5 million on this deal. That's not a very smart deal by the Pats. You want to talk about depth? I don't know. You just threw $3.5 million at a guy that couldn't beat out a rookie. And after watching Cam fall apart last year, you go, all right, who are you bidding against? Because the initial deal was, announced at like $7 million, and then it was like, no, it's 13.6 with incentives. It's like, okay, what's the realistic base? Like, what's he going to make if he plays? And it still was going to be, I think $6 or $7 million. And I thought, wow, not only did they do that deal early with Cam, they bumped him up quite a bit from where they were before. I think anybody, and this is kind of me getting it from people that are around the team. I'm not one of those people, as we all know, but I wouldn't say this stuff unless I were, feeling I was just confident about the information. And that, for the concerns about Cam, the non-quarterback, like what's his personality going to be? How's he going to, like, they loved him. They really did, by all accounts. I think there was some serious frustration that he wasn't vaccinated, and that if you're starting quarterback who then, again, messes up the testing protocol. But like, look, I can even have sympathy for Cam messing up the testing thing. When I was coming back from overseas, I was convinced I had it wrong the whole time. You ask somebody, whoever you ask, you get 5 different answers. I can see somebody screwing it up. The difference is I'm not a starting quarterback in the NFL, and nobody's depending on me. So you have to make sure you get that stuff right. So I think that part was frustrating, but I don't think it's, hey, Cam's not vaccinated, we're getting rid of this guy, because I actually think Belichick liked him, and the locker room clearly respected him. It's that Mac Jones, whether it was watching during the preseason games or more importantly, all the reps that he was taking, Mac Jones is the better quarterback. He was better. And if Cam wasn't much better than he was last season, then I actually don't think that's a huge surprise. And as I've said throughout, with any of the first-round quarterbacks, I feel good about the extremes, who's going to be really good, who isn't going to be good. If Sam Ehlinger ends up being like a 10-year starter in the pros, I'm going to be shocked. That would be on the extreme side of, like, he kind of looks like GNC, no coupon Tebow. And I hear about him in the mix. I was like, my gosh, like, that's not who I watch in college at all. Mac Jones, there's stuff I really like. There's some stuff that I thought there were limitations, but apparently Josh McDaniels is like, this guy runs the offense exactly the way I want him to run the offense. And for Cam, if the physical part isn't right, there's going to be a lot of pre-snap stuff that just isn't going to happen with Cam. He's just not going to do that stuff as much. And it's been noted, and you saw it play out there first time. So I also saw Chris Long tweet out saying, hey, this is actually Belichick doing Cam a huge favor by getting him out of there now and seeing if he can land somewhere else. But with the vaccination protocols and everything else going on, I don't know how desirable Cam Newton is, but you have to think he's going to end up on some kind of roster, and knowing he already pocketed some money on this deal too. So not a shock that it went this way, but I think him being cut is the surprising part of this. If he were going to lose his job to Mac Jones, I don't know that any of us would have said, no way, Cam's going to start every single game this year. But being out on cut down day is kind of a surprise. I know, Kyle, you ordered a jersey last year, correct?
Yeah, I did. But
how's that going?
I mean, it's going. I guess I thought a while ago that, like, listen, Super Bowl is not in the plans. It's just something I'd gotten used to, and at least thinking, will we show up, will we not? I was like, at least a good storyline was like a good Cam comeback season, and we show up with like 9-10 wins, and it's because Cam like had a couple good games and whatever. That's not going to happen. But I guess my question is, I was listening to you talk about how much money he was going to get, even if he didn't hit all of his incentives. And I just realized I was wrong. I thought it was $1.5 million to have him for the year. And like, he's better than Hoyer, right? Why couldn't we have him be the backup? But so I guess what I'm saying is, if he never started a game, would he have just only gotten like 1.5? What's the 1.5 million I keep seeing?
There was a base. His base was 1.5. His signing bonus was 2 million. So I believe, based on what I've read today, and again, you never know with the NFL stuff, that he already pocketed 3.5 million, and then maybe like another $100,000 for something. That the max version of what he could have made was 13.6. But I mean, I have to imagine that a lot of that was probably some playing incentives. But I doubt if he just was awful and played all season, he would get 13.6 million. So now none of that matters. And good for him. He was able to pocket some money here. But I still think that's kind of like that's quite the tab to eat. Now when you go, okay, now we have Hoyer. Oh, they freaking love Hoyer, though. I mean, they love him.
He's no Castle.
Like Hoyer's going to be on the team for, Hoyer, there's like nothing that I mean, Hoyer just screams limitations, and they love having him around. So there's that, and then Stidham, who I've never been as high on as. Now, I've always have this joke about every New England Patriots backup quarterback being like the most overrated player in sports, because every time they have somebody, then I'll read Pat's media people talk that guy up like all the time, and rarely do they work out. Although, you know what, Garoppolo, Brissett. There was a stretch in the middle there. There was a Rohan Davey to Ryan Mallett stretch where that guy for a long time was overrated. But the fact that they turned Garoppolo and Brissett into starters, then who knows? Maybe they're back. Maybe they're back in business.